Hello, comic book guys and gals, and welcome to Comic Mag Musings live. This handsome devil is your host, Bill Miller, and this handsomer devil is your co-host, Roger at Metarog Comics. Exactly. Super excited, Roger. How are you, sir?
I'm doing excellent, very blessed, and like you, I am. Of course, you know me. I'm maybe the biggest Deathlok fan out there. Have been since 1974. So when this came up on the wheel, I threw confetti.
I'd say you and Patrick are probably
Right.
neck and neck.
Right, Luther Manning himself. Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah. All right, I'm excited, and yes, that's right. We've got to. After this retrospective, we will be picking the next one. Where the heck is that stupid thing?
Look at Gray Man in the chat here.
Yes, I will holler out the chat here in a second. All right, I guess I'll have to come back to that.
I think he's still salty over the cover slingers defeats that we've given him over the past years.
He might. We've got Las Cruces, 1971. How are you?
Hey, Las Cruces.
From your neighbor in Arizona, and from your way across the country neighbor in Florida. Got the Gray Man from across the pond, as the kids say. Mm-hmm. And we've got another New Mexican, James, as Roger likes to say, Gallegos. But that's not proper, Roger. I've told you a million times. It's Gallegos.
Thank you for setting me straight, Bill.
That's no problem. That's what I'm here for. All right. So you want to give a little bit of background on just the issues that we cover while some other people come in?
Yeah. Well, we're gonna really concentrate on the Luther Manning Deathlok from the Bronze Age, which started in Astonishing Tales 25 and went through issue 36, except 29, which was a Guardians of the Galaxy reprint. And the series was canceled at that point, but less than a year later, Marvel Spotlight 33 took up some plot lines from that were dangling in Astonishing Tale 36. Then that was canceled. And then there were scattered appearances in Marvel 2-in-1, Marvel Team Up. And then the resolution of, in my opinion, the resolution of the Luther Manning opus was Captain America 286 through 288, where J.M. DeMatteis wrapped things up as best he could. That was in 1983, so at that point, about 5 or 6 years had passed. But that is essentially what we're covering here. There is one other issue in Marvel 2-in-1 54, which I'll touch on, but it really wasn't Luther Manning involved in that issue, and we'll talk about that when time comes.
Okay.
Hey, Kachoon!
Who has jumped in the chat. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping in. All right, so let's get started with our retrospective on Deathlok. So we start with Astonishing Tales number 25 from 1974. Beautiful, iconic Rich Buckler cover there.
Absolutely.
He also did the interior art, and he also co-wrote with Doug Mensch. So yeah, that's definitely the most iconic Deathlok issue, certainly.
Yeah, this was as we discussed before. This was one of Buckler's babies. He did the conceptualization of it,
correct,
and he drew it. And I think Monk really did more of the scripting, but I think he probably did a lot of the plots. He had a real ideal about the dystopian future and government overreach and military tyranny, things like that.
Right.
And I think that was sort of like the undertones of this series.
All right, so let's go into that one. So Luther Manning is in the near future from at the point when this was written, right? About 20 years ahead. He's a U.S. soldier. He's killed in action, but his body is used for a Project Alpha mech experiment, essentially, or composite project, if you will, that's headed by his commanding officer, Simon Riker. Manning becomes a Deathlok cyborg, with a computer replacing his, well, not replacing his mind, but working in conjunction with his mind, and which is supposed to control his mind. I think like the left side of his face, right, is cyborg, his right arm, and the strategic part of his brain has been left intact, but part of his brain is completely gone, right? And that becomes sort of important a little bit later on. But his personality kind of reasserts itself and takes control of his cyborg body and overrides essentially the computer. And he breaks out of Riker's laboratory or his facility or whatever you want to call it. He becomes a mercenary to try to gather money so he can find a new body to transplant himself into. And he takes like an assassination job from the mob. And correct me if I'm missing anything, if I'm wrong in my recollection. And the mob boss is actually so he bumps off a couple of people with this mob boss. He goes to collect Julian
Biggs.
Biggs. Okay, Julian Biggs. That's the mob boss. He goes to collect, and he finds out that he's actually a cyborg that was planted or created by Riker just to have him knock these two people off. And I think he goes to collect his payment, realizes that, and I think simultaneously Riker's lover.
Bill, sorry to interrupt you. I think you got some trouble in the chat there. You might want to get rid of.
Oh well, if it's cheaper than Tinder, then let's take a look. See.
I think Jackson Roykirk is taking care of him.
Oh, okay, excellent.
By the way, Jackson Roykirk get well soon. He had a little procedure, but
he did.
He's healing up.
He's doing well. Yes.
Yeah, we're pulling for you, my friend.
All right, let's block this user. All right, I think we're okay.
All right.
All right. So yeah, Nina, Riker's female companion, finds out that Riker himself has made himself into a cyborg, and he threatens her after she's made this discovery. And so I think that rounds out the issue.
Yeah, agreed. It seems to me like I don't know if at least the what I get as far as part of the concept here is that he had been dead for 5 years by the time that they put him in the Deathlok cyborg. He was on ice for a while, and he had a friend, Mike Travers, who saved him initially from a blast, and then eventually he died. And there's sort of a hint that Riker set him up so that he could, because he keeps calling him the most brilliant military strategist.
Right.
And can't you just block that person out?
Yeah, I try, and it says error when I try to block them out.
Oh, yeah, weird. But yeah, good conceptualization. Now, I think the mistake here, and again, I sort of think metaphysical ways here, is that they took the brain thinking that was that was the part that they could control, but they didn't figure that a man's spirit is, or soul, or whatever it is you want to believe in, is perhaps somewhere in there, and they don't know that. They experimented, like you said, because they had theories about what to do with him. That's why they put a computer programming like a drive, so that they could put orders into him.
Correct. It was programmed,
right?
Yes.
But apparently, the human spirit can override even that. I think there's some overtones about humanity being a little bit more a little stronger than just the technology that we use. And that's just what I read as sort of the overtones here. But very good encapsulation there.
Cool. We got some more People in chat, Treasure Woman, how are you?
Hey.
Anachronic Comics, Joe, good to see you.
Hey, Joe.
Neil's Comics and Video Games.
Hey,
What's
Neil.
going on, Neil? We've got the Jackson Roy Kirk, of course.
Well, of course.
He said, I have long thought Comic Manning musings would make a great cyborg. He already has the looks.
And who knows if he is or isn't?
That's true.
We don't know for sure. Nobody's met him.
We've got Gary B, the
Hey,
angry
Gary?
comic guy.
Angry comic guy.
Who else do we have here? I think that might cover it. Yeah, that covers it. All right. And we've got Naked HD XYZ.
Yeah.
Who made an appearance.
I somehow think he's not interested in Deathlok too much.
No, I don't think so. And we've got Ryan Magic Lasso. he
Hey,
said,
Ryan,
I'm in the nudies. That's true. They follow you, you dirty bird.
Oh boy.
All right. So that is number 26.
26. This is special to me, Bill, because this is actually one of the very first comics that I purchased off the rack, along with Hulk 180 and 181 back in 1974.
You poor thing.
At the Miami International Airport.
Well, it is you poor thing, because unfortunately, I know 181, perhaps 180 as well, you lost through some shenanigans from a former friend.
Right, right.
And you had to get them later on. Yeah.
Right. I was very, 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 very fortunate to find them later on, for next to nothing in a much better shape. So ultimately, that was a positive thing. Right, right. Okay, so so again, here we sort of learn a little bit more about that he, like I said, we're talking about that guy Mike Travers, who was a friend of his, and now he's trying to find him, right?
Right.
Because he now knows that that he's going to be eliminated, so they're sending agents after him, assassins and so forth.
Yeah.
And by the way, he has the weapon sets that he has is a laser pistol and this magnetic boot bayonet, right?
Correct.
And you see that hose that is attached from the power pack in the back to his front, that actually has some kind of amnio fluids, because as you see his head, he's decomposing.
Correct. Right? Correct. And that's retarding the decomposition.
Correct.
It's retarding eliminating it. Yeah.
Right. Very slow, but it's still, he even says that it smells and all that. So, you can sort of, you can sort of connect the dots.
Use your imagination, yeah.
Right, connect. Yeah, correct. Right, exactly right. So, a couple things happen. Another thing is that I think you mentioned it, Bill. He's got a cybernetic eye also. If you notice,
I didn't mention that, but yes, he does have a cybernetic eye.
And in that one, it's sort of like $6 Million Man. He can telescopic, and he also has like heat, ultraviolet. So he can tell when people have been on pavements and things like that.
Right. He can see computer readouts of different information through it.
Right.
Yes.
And one of the things I really liked about this series is the dialogue between the pewter and Luther Manning, because Luther Manning.
Why Roger says that is because that's Luther Manning's way of saying computer. And he's very consistent with that. He says pewter.
Pewter. Yeah. And Luther Manning is like a wisecracking, military guy. He's just like, uses whatever language, and the computer is very precise, and it has that computer type, so very easily can distinguish when he's talking to himself, it's actually talking to the computer.
Yeah, he very much he reminds me personality wise of a Nick Fury or a Sergeant Rock in that regard.
Yeah, I think that's a really good analogy.
Wisecracks, but always trying to get the mission done, kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good analogy. And he's always like arguing with the computer. The computer will sometimes say, "Well, if you want to survive this, you have to come back a few meters and shoot him from a certain distance." It's not. Nah.
Right.
He has kind of, at this point, he's kind of like very kind of like sanguine and very revenge driven. He's pretty violent comic here. There in the first one, as you mentioned, he kills those two scientists, and you see him point blank, and you see the back of the scientist just blow out.
Yeah.
Which you didn't see a lot of that in the superhero comics.
Yeah, it was very violent. I think that's part of what attracted me to it. Is they told a story seemingly in a more realistic way, right?
Right.
Because he isn't necessarily a superhero, and this isn't necessarily a superhero story, although he does cross paths with superheroes. So I
Yes.
enjoyed that aspect of it because I think it was more realistic. I think someone put in that situation with those motivations would probably behave in a similar way, despite whatever moral apprehensions they may have had.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's sort of understandable. When you see yourself, all of a sudden, the last memory you have, you step on I don't know if it was a landmine or something, and all of a sudden you wake up and you now have consciousness. Although his memories are hazy here and there, and you see himself like this with this face,
right?
Being used as an assassin, against your will. Yeah, you'd be a little salty too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway,
Plus, you're playing with house money at that point too, right?
Right.
I mean, he knows he's dead
right.
in every, at least in the ways in which we determine life and death, right? It does beget philosophical discussions with how much the mind is the composition of life versus the organic matter that comprises you. But we don't necessarily need to get into that, but it is fun that it can facilitate those types of discussions, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And it's I like those kinds of comics or stories in general that sort of make you ponder those kinds of questions that perhaps people have differing opinions on, and you can sort of try to critically think your way through it and say, well, that makes sense, or that doesn't, right?
Yeah.
Well, in this issue, again, he's trying to find his friend Mike Travers. Again, he's now he's on the lam, and Riker is, again, we as Bill said, we see this kind of cybernetic implant on the back of Simon Riker's head, and like when Nina sees him, all of a sudden we're like, he can't be found out apparently.
Right.
And so he tracks down Travers. Now, Travers is actually like a computer guru as well, besides being his friend and army buddy.
Right.
And he is actually under he's like sort of like I guess he's sort of like a prisoner there in Riker's stronghold.
Correct.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I think ultimately, if I recall, Deathlok ends up at the Statue of Liberty, right? And that's where he encounters who I think was an awesome character. I wish that he would have found a way to keep this character going, but Warwolf, who is one of the newest cyborgs Riker created, is just a badass.
Oh, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was great. And that's kind of where it ended, though, I think, where he was getting ready something was getting ready to happen because Riker had asked Warwolf to attack.
Right. And Riker, I don't know if it's this issue or the next, I'll let you do the next issue, but he says that I used Mike Travers and now I converted him into Warwolf.
Yeah, that was the next issue. Yeah.
That's the next issue. So that's the dilemma because that's his buddy.
Okay? Absolutely. Yeah, so Warwolf attacks, there it is. So cool. They could have done so much with just a badass concept.
And he had that bayonet on the back, you know?
Love it.
Man, he was cool.
Hey, so if you're out there, Marvel, it's never too late. So, and again, Rich Buckler and Doug Mensch were writing these. I think Buckler is consistently doing the covers and the interior art almost all the way through all of them. Not through all of them, but almost all the way.
Almost.
At least maybe all the way through the Astonishing Tales.
Yes, agreed.
So Warwolf attacks Deathlok, but yes, Riker said, hey, Mike's gone. I turned him into Warwolf. So Deathlok is kind of pulling his punches. He doesn't want to hurt his buddy Mike, at least not at this point. but yes, he doesn't want to hurt his buddy Mike, and that hurts him. So Deathlok becomes critically injured, but then Stryker reveals that Warwolf isn't actually Mike, and Mike is dead, is what he tells him.
Right.
So this means two things. Number one, Deathlok's pissed off because that's his buddy. And number two, now he's not going to pull any punches because that's not his buddy, that being Warwolf. So he ends up destroying Warwolf. And Riker was lying, ultimately. Mike wasn't dead. He was being held captive at the facility or the laboratory, whatever you want to call it. And Deathlok escapes in a helicopter. And he notices that he had this third voice in his head, this very violent third voice that now was gone. And the computer, I think, tells him, I think that might have been a tracking device that Riker had installed that now is either defunct or has been damaged during your fight with Warwolf. So Deathlok takes a little detour. He goes to his old home in New Jersey because he wants to visit his wife Janice and his now like 5-year-old son with whom she was pregnant around his death, right? And he shows up and she's horrified by him, and you know, doesn't want anything to do with him, and he leaves. He's not very happy about it, and so he goes and he tries to commit suicide with his laser pistol, but his computer is programmed not to allow self-extermination, right? And so it jams his gun. He's not able to do it, and in an anger, he breaks his laser pistol.
Yeah.
And I think that's the end of
that's it. Yeah. No, that you got it perfectly. A couple things I just wanted to add. Warwolf pulls out that hose with the amnio fluid. He gets it back in, but now
he decomposes a little bit.
Now he's a little decomposed. He's a little weaker, you know, and he doesn't have his laser pistol, right? Because by the way, when he saw his wife, but when he went to see his son, he couldn't go into the room because he realized, hey, I'm going to scare the bejeepers out of this guy. He doesn't know who I am. So, so at that point, he's like, yeah, why am I alive? I'm just a monstrosity here. I'm like, there's nothing to live for anymore. So you're right.
This was in 74, 75.
Yes.
And his wife, at least in the comic, is African-American.
Right. They're interracial marriage.
I wonder if that, I mean, certainly that was probably a bigger deal then. I don't know if it was groundbreaking, but it was certainly uncommon to have an interracial marriage like that. So I thought that was pretty cool and interesting as well.
You're right. I'm glad you said that because I found that interesting too. I mean, I didn't notice it back then. I mean, to me, it didn't matter. But looking in hindsight, it's pretty groundbreaking. And again, there's one of those things that you don't see unless you've read this series. Those little nuances in there, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. So this one here. Okay. So he got rid of that pistol, his laser pistol, right? So now Nina Ferry, I think her name is, Riker. Apparently the devices, the cybernetic organisms can't function without some kind of human mind. I think they call that mind lock. Yeah. Yep. By the way, the Omni computer is sort of like the Big Brother computer. They have monitors everywhere. Correct. So even though they can't see out of Deathlok's eye, they can see because of all the buildings and things around what's going on. Yep. Okay, so
it's like a big monitoring computer.
It's just like a massive database and computer that calculates all kinds of stuff, right? We'll get into that more later. And Riker is very much attached to it and very attached later on. So that Nina Ferry, he puts her like in a comatose state and hooks her up to that computer so that they can control this tank. I forgot what they call it, a death tank or death machine. I forgot what they call it.
Yeah, I don't remember. I know it's remotely controlled by Nina. Yes,
by Nina. Right. They need her for some kind of relay system so that they can control. But Riker is actually the one giving the orders to the tank. And they also have. There's also guys. There's a little team of guys with high-powered rifles that are after Deathlok.
Right.
So Deathlok not having the laser pistol, he raids it's kind of off panel, but he says he raids an armory.
Mm-hmm.
So
some ammo and some.
Right. He looks like a Mexican bandito because he's got the cross
Right.
cross gun belts, and he's got some revolvers, and the computer keeps telling him, and grenades. The computer keeps telling him this stuff is old junk,
Right.
Yeah, this may not even work or whatever. But he's like, well, it's what I got,
Right.
So he starts eliminating some of the guys. He surprises them because the computer is very analytical, so he can say, he's going to say these guys are probably going to be here and all this.
Right. You've got 3 hostiles. This one's the most probable to cause you harm first. Those types of things. The computer assists him that way.
So he dispatches the first set of them. And then the tank is relentless. It's slow, but it's just relentless. It just keeps after him. He's blasting and he's dodging. And then finally he's up against this wall, like the northern wall, I think they call it.
Right. Well, prior to that, just to point out, he was fighting a gang of cannibals too. Prior to that.
That's right. He got bit. He got bit in the leg.
Yep.
Yeah. So apparently his leg has flesh because he put some kind of patch on there.
Correct.
But against society. By the way, I don't know if we said this, but society is just in shambles. We
probably didn't. Yeah. He's in New York mainly in that area, but yeah, the country is in ruins, particularly the bigger urban areas like New York City. And there are just gangs of people running around everywhere. It's very apocalyptic in that respect.
Correct. And so they're cannibals because there's no food, there's no supermarkets. Later on, we find out that New York was evacuated and a lot of other major cities were, but that's much later on. Mm-hmm. But know that it's just a dystopia. I mean, a total just messed up world at this point, right? So when he goes to visit his wife, that was on a base. And apparently, military is still up and running, but not really under control of the political government.
There's a power struggle in the country.
Right. There's like corporations, there's crime syndicates, and then there's just like, they're like these drones that are controlled by the military. We'll get to that later. Right. So, but he also finds this one guy, I think his name is Link Shane, I think it is, or Shand or something. And he was at first he was gonna, attack him, but he's like, hey, no, I'm a friend or whatever. And apparently there are counter revolutionaries.
Right. And that's who Shane is, right?
That's who Shane is, right. And so so he hooks up with them and he helps them out by killing a few of the guys, and then they go up against this northern wall, so they're stuck there, and the tank is bearing down on them, and that's where I think the issue ends.
Yes. Yep.
So again, no 29 because that's the Guardians of the Galaxy replay.
Shout out to Richard. Good to see you, Richard.
Richard, is that Richard Stapp?
Yep. The one and only. If there's another, he's a phony. And we've also got Psychedelic Comics. Good to see you. Big fan of Deathlok as a kid. Yeah.
Great. Ooh, Ryan, you got to show that part of that piece of original art.
Yeah, no doubt.
I'm very jealous.
The Naked HD. James says the Naked HD guy is just subbing me back. Awesome. All right. So which one's that? So we skipped 29. Obviously, because that was the Guardians of there it is. And now we're at 30. So they get to the rebel soldier gets to atop the wall because they got to figure something out. They got to go through the wall or over the wall. He gets over the wall, and unfortunately, he gets blasted and killed. Riker's mercenaries chase Deathlok into so I think this is where they chased him into the abandoned armory, isn't it?
Right. This was the second time. The first time it was like off panel where he got the guns, and now
So he goes in there and he gets more ammo, and then there's like some defunct cryogenics lab that's next to a junkyard where he kills the mercenaries, Deathlok does, and he launches like a metal girder at a weak point, I think, below the turret of that remote control tank to disable the tank. And that's how he ultimately defeats it.
Right. The tank got like right up on him. He waited till tank got right up on him. And then he launched that, like you said, like from that, he took like a frame of a car and bent it and he used that like a bow, and it was,
Yep.
With his strength, it was very powerful.
Correct. Yeah, and he's extremely strong.
Yeah.
And he can take a lot of damage too.
Right. As long as it's not to that hose or his head, I think he can take a lot of damage. Yeah.
Right. Simultaneously, while this is happening, Riker is transforming himself into the savior machine. And Mike, his buddy Mike, escapes from Riker's laboratory, and he starts searching for Deathlok.
Right.
I think that's it for this issue.
Okay. Right. So the next one, I guess, is when he reveals this one here.
Yeah, number 31.
31.
Great covers too, right? Have we mentioned that?
Buckler, I mean, he is so underrated. I mean, he did Fantastic Four for a while, and those were pretty good. But when you look at Demon Hunter for Atlas, Seaboard, and this is some of his best work. I mean, really good stuff.
Now, Demon Hunter, that sounds awfully close to a Marvel.
We will talk about that in a little bit.
We will.
We will talk about that in a very little bit. So Mike catches up to Deathlok finally down, past that wall. He sees the hole in the wall. He sees, the human remains, and he's like, "Oh, this is Deathlok's work for sure," So he follows the path of destruction, and Deathlok at first, like, he's gonna kill him. He's like, "It's me, Mike. It's me, Mike." So he's like, "Oh man, okay, what happened?" And he was like, "Well, I was stuck at Rikers. So now you're alive. Well, good. He didn't know right at that point.
Right.
But then he starts confessing something.
Mm-hmm.
He's
very big something.
Very big something. He's like, "Luther, I got to tell you, me and Janice," and then he doesn't say anything else. And Deathlok just loses it, or Luther man, and just grabs him, throws him to the ground, puts his foot on his face. He's like, "I should kill you," because he married his ex-wife. But remember, he thought they were dead for 5 years.
Correct.
I mean, cheated on him.
And they just got married just 6 months previous to this point too. So I mean, it was years after he was assumed dead that this happened. But still, it was at that point for his wife and son, that was kind of that and revenge were the driving or motivating factors for him. So I think that was a crushing blow for Luther Manning. And Mike and the computer kind of both talked him out of killing Mike, because I certainly think he wanted to, and he was capable.
He wanted to, but he also remembered that Mike saved his life. So he says, "Okay, you saved my life, I'll let you give your life." But that's another thing I wanted to discuss, is that he's trying to reclaim his humanity at this point. Now, later, after that little confrontation with Mike, he learns about this. He learns about this gangster, and he overhears them that they know about a cyborg surgeon. Right. So he's like, "Oh, that must," because remember, he killed the first two guys unknowingly.
Right.
So so he goes, "That must be the guy that I need to become, that he can return me to my human self," because that's what he wants.
We didn't say that, so just to tie that off. Yeah. Those two guys that the mafia boss, who was actually a cyborg, Julian Biggs, you said, right?
Right, Julian Biggs.
A cyborg for Riker. The two guys that mafia boss had him kill were two of the three surgeons.
Correct. Right.
And so because this is the third one.
Right. I think at this point, Riker wanted to, sort of get rid of the evidence, the people who knew about the projects, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
he malfunctioned, right? He took over the computer and he escaped. So as far as Riker is concerned, he's an unsuccessful experiment. Correct.
Yeah, correct. That's why. Well, but then he has other people. He has another plot we'll talk about in a bit.
Correct.
So now he's like, "Oh, okay, I'm going to follow this gangster or whatever, racketeer or whatever." And there's actually a fight between two different factions there, and everybody's killed except the guy with the suitcase of money, which is the gangster who was talking about, "Oh, this is for this cybernetic surgeon." Right. So he gets into a helicopter, then he throws the bayonet at the back rotor so that it crashes but not kills the guy.
Well, that's in the next issue, I think.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Am I ahead?
that guy's like an informant,
Right.
right? And he's escaping. He's getting away in
that's
the
right.
helicopter.
It ends when he's getting at the helicopter. You're right. This issue ends. Right. Okay. Sorry. I was ahead of myself. I got a little excited there.
I know you did. I'm here to slow you down, Roger.
Thank you.
Real quick, Ben Compton, good to see you. Joey Bag of Sevens, thanks for stopping in. Appreciate it. Yeah, so in 32, that's where he does. Yeah, he throws a dagger at the tail rotor and downs the whirlybird, if you will. And the informant he takes off to the abandoned subway system in New York. And it looks like he's being attacked by the same cannibal gangs, but they're just like drones. Ultimately, sadly, though, they end up killing the informant. Deathlok fights him off. He grabs the satchel of money, and he takes off. Ultimately, he finds out the money's counterfeit. I think Mike, while this is going on, Mike returns to Riker's base. He infiltrates it, though, because he's trying to rescue Nina from being hooked up to this Omni computer. And when he disengages her from the computer, there's a self-destruct mechanism. So they just escape being blown up from that. But her mind still has like a latent remote connection to Riker's system. So she's not completely decoupled. At least her mind isn't completely decoupled from Riker, him being able to see what they're doing and him being able to have some control over her.
Right, exactly. And Deathlok keeps the money thinking, well, you know, if the surgeon guy wanted it, maybe this is something that, you know, could lead me to him, you know.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he doesn't throw it to get rid of it or anything.
Well, not in this issue.
Not at this point.
Yeah, that's not this point. This is another issue here where, you know, you got that Harlan Riker. No, this is not Harlan. This is Simon Riker. Sorry.
Correct.
And now you're sort of, you know, he's sort of at this point overseeing him, like just like looking over his shoulder, like I guess sort of
like Big Brother.
But he is, yeah.
Right. Big Brother's watching.
Big Brother's watching, right? So all those fears of those people out there, maybe it's true, right? So as I recall here now, Travers gets Nina and he spirits her out of the statue. I think it was I don't know if it was Statue of Liberty or some other base. I think it was still some other base, I think.
Yeah.
Right. And
Deathlok repairs that helicopter, right?
Oh, that's right. He repairs that. Yeah, that's right. And
it's pre-programmed to fly to
where the surgeon guy is. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So he lands in this like estate kind of thing, and so he's walking up there, and apparently he's also very heavy.
Correct. He is. Yes.
Because he makes
those metal cybernetic parts. Yes.
Yeah, like 400, 500 pounds.
Like 380, 400 pounds heavy. Yes.
So he's walking up to this estate, and there's these two guys. You know, he's like, "Oh, I want to see the cyborg doctor or whatever surgeon." Right. He's like, "Nah." So he, you know, listen, if this is Deathlok, they must know about this guy by now, right?
Right.
So he doesn't. I don't think he kills him, but he just like brushes them aside, and they go flying. You know. Yeah. And so he goes inside. And there's a guy sitting at a chair there, and then he all of a sudden he goes up to him and he's like, "That's me. That's Luther Manning." You know,
right. It's a clone of him.
It's a clone, right? It's a clone. So not only did they harvest his brain for Deathlok, they also harvested his DNA and they cloned him, right? And then later on,
Dolly the sheep, look out.
Yeah. and then in the background, he sees another guy coming around, and he says, "Are you the cyborg doctor?" He doesn't really a surgeon. He doesn't really say anything at that point, but he says, "Oh, yes, I I escaped to Riker, and we're on the same side in the whole bit. And he showed his arm, and he's got like these radiation poisoning, and that's how he's controlled by Riker.
He says his name is Hellinger, right?
His name it says is Hellinger, right? So he sweets
He's
talk.
a good guy. He wants to help.
Right? Yeah, he's like, yeah, maybe I can save you. It's possible. Maybe I think he says it's really not, but he says, since we have the same enemy, let's get together and see what we can do. So he gives him. Is it this issue or the next issue where he gives him the attaché case with the bomb?
Yeah, it is this issue. I just don't think he doesn't use it this issue.
He doesn't use it yet. Yeah, but he says, yeah, go to this place. This is where you can destroy Riker, and then we can fix you up on the whole bit. It's all a ruse. He really wants to kill Deathlok. It's like, I think it's part of the Revolutionary Army base is where he sends them.
Correct. Yes.
I'm not going to give away why, but the suitcase is supposed to release with 10 seconds of the detonation time.
Right.
But it's at the 10-second 9. It's not releasing, and he's right at the door, and boom. Well, not boom yet, but that's where the issue ends.
Right. And in that, Riker's now the savior machine, I think, in that issue. And
yeah, right.
Hellinger is revealed, not to Deathlok, but he is revealed to be Simon Riker's brother in the last issue.
And he's mostly cybernetic. He just has a little bit of a brain, but everything else is metallic, I do believe. Yeah.
Yep. Number 34. So Deathlok, he can't separate the bomb from his wrist, so he jams it into the door at the Revolutionary Guard headquarters, and it blows up, right? It blows up the headquarters or base, whatever you want to say. It takes out Deathlok. He's out, and it takes off his arm too, his right arm.
His cybernetic arm. The
right, correct. His buddy Mike finds him and brings him to CIA headquarters, and they're after Riker too, right? We talked about that whole power struggle. Well, they're right in the mix of it. And they repair Deathlok, and they reprogram him for what they want him to do, right?
You got it.
He doesn't want to be controlled anymore. He's very much against this initially, but he does have a common goal with them of getting Riker, right? They want to eliminate a competitor, someone who's gone rogue, and he wants to eliminate the person that put him in this predicament. So there, I think Riker at this point is merged with the Omnicomputer, right?
Yes, correct.
And Deathlok finds another clone of himself on Riker's medical team. The clone is supposed to have the mind of the third surgeon, the one he's been looking for, that worked on Deathlok, right? He links Deathlok up with the Omnicomputer so that Deathlok can fight Riker virtually in this virtual computer world.
That's right.
And I think that's right when they're starting to do that is when this issue ends. Yeah.
Right. They're side by side on these stands.
Right.
And now remember, there's a clone with Hellinger. Okay. And then there's a clone with Simon Riker
on this
that actually has the mind. And what they're doing is that they put the memories on these tapes, like the minds, of these tapes. So they keep telling Deathlok, oh, this is safe because, we can actually extract your memories and put them on a tape and then put them back into you.
You kids would use flash drives now, but they had tapes back then.
Had tape. Yeah, they were these big, thick tapes back then, almost like 8 tracks, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, hold on.
We got Jerry the Jitterbug. Jerry
Jerry!
the Jitterbug in here. How you doing, Jerry? And Sean, Slim Comics More. Good to see you.
Hey, Slim. Man, we got some good people in here. All right, so again, now Deathlok is in the Omnicomputer, Nexus, hyper, whatever, the intranet space there.
Right.
And he encounters Riker. By the way, Riker is naked in the thing, but we won't get into that. That was kind of gross. So while they're in there, Riker's tries to show him, what happened when the 5 years that he was out, and there apparently was some kind of bomb that fell on New York. They don't know if it was a terrorist attack or if it was a foreign country,
correct,
or what, and then that sort of led to a domino effect. People evacuating New York and going into Long Island, where now he is actually able to control the population there somehow. I think through the omnicomputer surveillance systems. So he's sort of saying, he's sort of trying to sort of like say to Deathlok, hey, I'm not that a guy.
Exactly. I did this for everyone's benefit.
Right. I mean, people need to be controlled. They need direction and all this stuff. And, Luther Manning is not buying it. They struggle, virtually to the point where they overload the system. The omnicomputer feeds back onto them and actually brings their memory back, but an opposite. So Deathlok goes into Simon Riker's body, and Simon Riker goes into Deathlok's body really briefly. And he Riker starts to feel what it feels like to be in that kind of situation.
Right.
And then it reverts back to their original bodies.
Right. He brought him back, but he accidentally put him in the wrong body.
Wrong body, right.
And then
exactly.
he realized it, and he swapped them.
Right. But at that point, I guess he had already gone mad, because of the
right.
He was in that computer, which a mind was not supposed to be in. Then he went into the Deathlok body. He had that experience, which was just shocking to his system. When he went back into his own body, he was blithering.
Like an identity crisis. Yeah, he just fractured mentally.
Yeah, he was just gone. And Deathlok wants to, kill him, but they're like, no sense in killing him. He's no longer a threat. Already. Yeah. He's gone. So but then what happens then is that when they try to put the Deathlok's memories, like when they put him into the clone body, the former Deathlok Luther Manning consciousness goes into the clone body, and he awakens, right? But Deathlok is also awake.
Right. So just to back up a bit,
the
plan was the CIA said, "Hey, we'll take and we will move your mind and your consciousness into this clone's body."
Right.
But unfortunately, what happened is they were copied into the clone's body. So now you have the clone with Deathlok's mind and his memories, and you have the original Deathlok with his mind and memories. And that's not what was intended.
That's not what was intended, right? Although we're not sure exactly. It seems like the clone has more Luther Manning attributes than Deathlok, but
correct.
But they definitely have, and he also has the computer in the clone.
Right, which was not intended either.
It was not intended, right? So
he wanted to. He detests. He pretends to detest the computer, and didn't want anything to do with him. Yeah, so the computer came along for the ride to the clone too.
So essentially, nothing went to plan here.
Right.
I mean, everything went awry, but except that Simon Riker is now no longer a threat. However, Hellinger is still out there,
right?
And he has a plan.
Yeah, and he turned Deathlok's clone, I think in the previous issue, into the radioactive Doomsday mech, right? And he sent it to destroy Deathlok. So that one's 36. Deathlok and the Pewter, as we mentioned, were both copied into the clone, but both Deathlok bodies share like a mind link. And they're able to team up to ultimately defeat this Doomsday mech because of that. Deathlok begrudgingly agrees to help the CIA clean up their whole Riker mess, while his clone is supposed to be transcribing Deathlok's memories. That's how we know about this story.
That's right.
Essentially from the memoirs of Deathlok via his clone.
Yeah, there's actually two different sort of stories in here. There's the Deathlok cyborg part and the Luther Manning transfer of
that's right.
tape
Yep.
part. Right.
The CIA makes another clone, a medical clone of Deathlok, so that while he's out on assignment in the field, they can still monitor him.
Right.
And I think that's where this one ends. Unless I missed.
Well, doesn't he meet Godwolf? The Godwolf part.
Godwolf in this?
Godwolf.
Godwolf.
Yeah, the Godwolf principle.
Okay, yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah,
that's right. He saw him in like the subway, right?
Correct. Right.
Yeah, I think on his mission, he saw him in the subway, and he fought him. And
well, Godwolf saved him first.
What's that?
Godwolf saved him first from those attackers down in the subway.
That's right.
Right, and then he followed him. He was like, "Hey,
Godwolf's like trying
get away from me,
brush off." Right, he's trying to get rid of him.
Yeah.
And ultimately, Deathlok keeps coming after him, and that's when Godwolf zaps him really good, and then escapes. I think.
Right.
Or at least goes off, and we don't know where he went.
Right. He just disappears.
Right.
Deathlok disappears, and unfortunately, that's where the series ends. We don't know what Godwolf has up. Remember, Hellinger is still around because although they defeated his clone, he's still out there plotting. All right. Now we got this enigmatic figure, Godwolf, who we don't know if he's friend or foe or what.
We don't know what his backstory is.
Right. And we don't know what the heck happened to Deathlok. We don't know if he's been destroyed or displaced. We don't know anything.
Yeah.
So, but this is the end. This is from July 1976, right? Then I think this would be the next one, but I think Bill and I are not sure if this is chronologically because this is really back at his time. Let's just talk about this real quick because it'll get a little confusing otherwise. So here, this is really Spider-Man. He was traveling through time. He went, I believe, back in time on Dr. Doom's time machine, and then he went forward and he overshot it. And he went to Killraven's time at first. Right? And then he's like, I don't know how to operate this thing. So he's getting closer. Now he's in 1990. And remember, he's from 1976, right?
Correct.
So he sees, he comes out of the time machine and he's like, well, I'll just go back in and try it again because, he sees that New York is destroyed. And so,
right.
But he sees all these kids and Deathlok's about to shoot him. He's like, oh, hold on a second. I can't let that happen.
He's got to intervene. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Spider-Man, he's a hero through and through, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he attacks Deathlok, stops him from shooting at the kids, and Deathlok's like, you crazy nut, these guys are muties, they're cannibals, they're gonna eat us, they're gonna kill us. And he's like, oops.
Yeah.
But eventually Deathlok I think kills one and injures another, and they take one of the mutants, and Deathlok's like, well, if you want to follow me, get one of the mutants, but I got to figure out, they're going to come back, because
they take one prisoner.
They take one prisoner, right?
Yeah.
They have like a hive mind. They're not
correct.
They don't think
they have these cubes, these glowing cubes.
Yeah, they have these cubes which shoot out some kind of force beams or something.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so he talks to Spider-Man and he's like, Spider-Man, what year is this? He's like 1990, and Spider-Man just goes ballistic. He goes, no, it can't be. This is 15 years.
Right.
It couldn't have gone this bad, the whole bit, because New York is destroyed.
Yeah.
So he's back there just sort of just being very maudlin and all this. And but then, he has the kid and he's like knocked out. And then they encounter, do they encounter the mutants again, or something? Oh no, the sniper.
There's some mercenaries.
Yeah, the mercenaries. Yeah,
that are watching them. Strake and Grissom.
Strake and Grissom, right? They're mercenaries, obviously after Deathlok, because
they're set up in a billboard.
Right, they have like through a little hole in the billboard up there.
Correct.
Obviously, Stryker wants to kill Deathlok, so this must have happened before that. So because Stryker is still after him.
Right.
Spidey's spider sense knows about it, so Deathlok ducks, and
they're trying to kill Deathlok, and they're
trying to kill Deathlok, right?
And they
But
killed the kid. The
they
cute
kill the kid instead. He's
right.
and now they're and of course Deathlok takes care of the two guys up there, and now he's like, oh, now they're going to come after us because they have a mind link. They know when one of them's dead.
Correct. They being the thralls, the little cannibals with the cubes.
Right, the cannibal mutants with the cubes. That's what I call them. Right? So
easy for you to say.
Yeah, right. So they come back. He's right. They come back with this leader who's like costumed. So that was kind of weird, but I guess because it's a superhero title, they kind of wanted to have like a super villain aspect to it. Yeah. And eventually, Deathlok, obviously he's got no qualms about killing these people.
Correct.
Spider-Man's like, hey,
Yeah, Spidey still doesn't like it, even as dangerous as they are.
Yeah, let's not do that,
Right.
But the leader is ultimately killed in the skirmish. Spider-Man takes off his mask, and he's just a kid. He's just a young kid.
Yeah.
So he's just really just fed up. He's just like
he wants nothing to do with this version of the future.
Nothing
he's
to
like,
do with
I got to get back to the time platform to get the hell out of here and try to get back to where I belong.
Exactly. And that's exactly what he does. He goes back to the time platform and is whisked away and back to 1976. Right. So that's sort of an interlude. It doesn't really move the
It doesn't advance the story much.
Yeah.
It was a fun Marvel team up. If you're a Deathlok fan, there's nothing wrong with that.
Steve, there's
I
nothing wrong.
love Disney and comics. Good to see you, sir.
How you doing, my friend? Creepy Cow Comics. Cool. I like that name. Nice. All right.
Creepy Cow Comics. Good to see you. Thanks for dropping in.
Do you want to take this one, Bill?
Marvel Spotlight 33, right?
Yeah. Remember, the Astonishing Tales 36 was canceled. This is actually Astonishing Tales 37, but it was already done. Right. That was canceled. Yeah.
This was written by David Kraft, helped write this one.
Correct. David Anthony Kraft, yes.
So Godwolf sends Deathlok through a time warp to stop him from pursuing him. Now we know what kind of happened, right?
Right.
The computer doesn't know it. He doesn't know what's going on. But now Deathlok's in pre-war New York. Someone named Eric Simon Payne is in New York, and he's fleeing a cult that employed him as, say it, Devil Slayer.
Reaper of Souls. Reaper of Souls.
Now,
but this is. Are you going to say who he was? In Atlas Seaboard?
Oh yeah, no. You said it. What was his name?
Demon Hunter.
Demon Hunter. Yeah. It's the same character. You said
same character.
Brought over. Yeah.
Because in Atlas Seaboard they had creator rights, so Buckler actually owned the character, so he took him over to Marvel when he came over. Yeah.
Yep. Now Eric thinks. No, he's going to see his ex-wife because, he's battling demons, right? He doesn't want to work for them anymore,
right?
And they're after him, and he's trying to go see his ex-wife. I think she works at a hospital,
right? Corey, yeah,
correct. Right. Well, there's something with Corey because Deathlok is there, and he thinks Corey is Janice.
Right.
His, I guess, ex-wife or I don't know how you'd say it. His
widow. Yeah, widow? Right? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Weird, yeah.
And so they end up fighting each other because Devil Slayer thinks that Deathlok is part of the demon gang that's trying to bring him back to tow, right?
Correct.
Ultimately, though, they get it straightened out and they end up teaming up to rescue Corey from the demons who are coming to get her too. And the demons retreat. Deathlok ultimately just kind of like fades away.
That's right.
And I'm sure it has something to do with Godwolf, and the time traveling that Deathlok was doing. But I think that ends the story arc, at least.
Yes.
In this issue.
This ends the story arc for a bit. There is one other appearance which we have to mention here. And this one here, it doesn't fit really well, but it looks to me like when he disappeared in Marvel Spotlight 33. I don't know if it was Godwolf or if somehow he just spontaneously went to another area, but still in the same time, but ultimately he gets found by Mentallo and the Fixer. And
this is definitely after the team up. We know that.
Yeah, after the
Mentallo and the Fixer, in Spidey's mind, that's how they learned from Spidey's thoughts about the existence of Deathlok.
Right, and it's referenced in here. So you're right. You're absolutely right. But so the Fixer, again, being a mechanical genius, makes a device that can control him. Right? It can control him into the fact that he can tell him what objective to do, and he has to do it. Right. So he he's like, oh, this is a perfect killing machine. And they are plotting to kill the president, Jimmy Carter. Well, not kill, to mind control the president, Jimmy Carter, with this rifle that shoots that same mind control chip or whatever it is.
Correct.
So that they control, the government. So he puts the actual order into Deathlok. Okay, when he's up in the inauguration or a speech, I forgot which one it was.
I think they were hired by rival peanut farmer.
Maybe, yeah, or maybe Billy was jealous. I don't know. So he goes over to there to fire that into him. But of course, the Fantastic Four is there as part of the crowd and civvies. And instead of firing from afar, because his objective is to get that into Jimmy Carter, but he really doesn't want to do it. He doesn't like to be controlled because he's been controlled by Riker and the CIA already. He's just fed up with being controlled. So he actually charges the stage.
Right.
And while he's doing that, he gets attacked by the Thing and the torch and the whole bit. And they battle and gets beat up and the whole bit. But he does manage to shoot that dart into Jimmy Carter. Or apparently Jimmy Carter.
But was it Jimmy Carter? Could it have been someone in disguise, Rob?
What was it Jimmy Carter? Yeah, this little green guy called the Impossible Man was actually impersonating Jimmy Carter.
That's right.
So that dart didn't do any damage to him. And then at the end, Mr. Fantastic, he's captured by the Invisible Girl in her invisible globe, and he's like, I'm going to take the guy and take that memory chip, that control chip out of him, and that's it. That's where it ends.
Yep.
This is what, 1977.
Correct.
Right. Now in 79, a Deathlok does show up here. By the way, beautiful George Perez art in here. He actually shoots the Thing and actually penetrates his hide. But this is
coming to him.
Yeah, but this is not Luther Manning Deathlok. They took some of the cybernetic parts and created a totally robotic Deathlok. Right. So we don't have to really talk about this because it doesn't really further the story any. Okay.
But just FYI.
Just FYI. Right. And there were various Deathloks after this. There's like a John Kelly and Marvel Comics Presents, and then Michael Collins in the 90s, and then another guy in the 2000s. But we're not talking about them. We're talking about Luther Manning. And this is where the story ends. Although later on there are little stories that sort of take it to another level, right? Did I take that last one or did you?
Yeah, you did. I'll take this one.
Okay, all right.
Quickly. Creepy Cow Comics is actually Custom Comic Shop. George, how you doing? Good to see you.
Hey, how you
doing? Jimmy Carter was an easy target. All right. Captain America 286. This is from 83. So we're talking about a 6-year difference from the 2-in-1 to this one right here.
Correct.
So, and this was J.M. DeMatteis,
yeah, one of those.
Mike Zeck with the cover and art.
Oh, gorgeous.
And I can't remember. I know you guys covered one of these.
Yep, this one.
Was it this one?
Yeah, on Graders Notes. Yep.
I thought so. So Godwolf again. He sends Luther Manning the clone. Luther Manning, right? Not to be confused with Deathlok, who was not the clone. to the past to find Deathlok because he's missing. They don't know where the heck he's at. Manning's already on the run from the police as soon as he gets into the past. Right. And what's her name? Bernie Rosenthal.
Rosenthal, yeah.
Yeah. The gal pal of Cap almost hits and runs over Luther Manning. Right?
Yeah, she and Cap are going to visit her parents.
Correct. Yeah, it's a big day. Yeah,
big day.
Because her mom's been cooking all weekend long, and
cooking. Her sister's there the whole bit.
Correct. Right? Yep. So it's a big deal. Luther Manning was heading to the brand factory or facility, and correct. Steve Rogers says, "Well, sorry, let me investigate this real quickly." Bernie's like, "You son of a." So he goes with them, right? He's going to help them. They get into the facility, and it's full of Roxxon agents. How clever, close to Exxon. Come on, Marvel, do better.
Do better than that.
It's full of Roxxon agents who they battle, and out of nowhere, Deathlok appears, and toward the end of it, he blasts Luther Manning right in the chest.
Yep, right. It's supposed to be abandoned, but there's actually, a surreptitious genetics lab in there.
Correct.
And by the way, the reason I think the reason they sent him to the past is that mind link that they have is like affecting the clone, the Luther Manning clone. And he's thinking, if I don't find Death, it's like a compulsion to find that other part of him.
Correct.
Now, why?
Yeah, it's almost like, because they don't out and out say it, but it gets intimated, and then toward the end of this issue and the beginning of the next issue, it's essentially the reason he goes to find Deathlok is because it validates his existence.
Correct.
Being separated by him, he feels this hole, something's missing, and he needs to find Deathlok to kind of have that closure, or the yin to his yang that kind of honors the reason that he exists.
Again, I'd say that's a pretty good encapsulation. Yeah, right there. Yeah. But by the way, this cover here, Bill.
It's a good cover.
Jeez, this thing is so good. I think I gave this a 5 on Creators Notes.
I think you did. Yeah, Zek does some good work from time to time, no doubt about it.
Look at that. I mean, the dripping there of the water, that grimace, the way he's holding the pistol. I mean, the sights. Yeah. Man, this is good.
It is.
Man, all right. Anyway, sorry, I get lost in time.
That's all right.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So comics are more.
So here,
this is a good cover too. Actually,
it's a good cover too, right? But that first one, man. I mean, it's like,
this is Zek as well.
This is Zek and Beatty. Just two masters, honestly, at this point. This run of their run on Captain America. So honestly, just there's not a bad panel between those two. Anyway, but I digress. So Luther Manning is shot, and Cap initially thinks he's dead, but he's actually still talking.
Right.
And he's like, he's like, Cap, he something like he can be saved or something to that effect, right?
Right.
Or I need him or something like that. Even though the guy's bleeding there. So Cap, Deathlok is by the way, the geneticists are still around there, by the way, and they intervene later. So he and Cap get into it. Now that's cool because you have the super soldier from the 40s and the super soldier from the 90s, right? Battling, and Cap gives them a heck of a battle. I mean,
Cap gets the upper hand, and
he gets the upper hand, right? And he keeps telling him, hey, but he keeps telling him like, hey, you're a man, you can do better than this. You're being controlled.
Correct.
But ultimately, the geneticists grab Captain America, and Deathlok puts the kibosh.
Yep.
But that statement stays in his head, right?
Absolutely.
Now I don't remember, Bill, what happens after that, because at some point Luther Manning clone's mind is transmitted to the Deathlok cyborg,
because he touches. They have to touch.
That's right.
It's the physical connection that does the memory transference from one to the other. And so Luther Manning calls him over there, essentially, I'm expiring. Please do me this one last favor, essentially. And Deathlok touches him, and that's what happens. And Luther Manning does expire, but now with those memories comes the humanity of Luther Manning the man. And that's when Deathlok realizes he's been used yet again against his will by these geneticists and Roxxon agents to do their bidding. And he goes berserk and starts killing the Roxxon agents, right?
Well, he says, Captain says, hey, don't be killing them. He goes, okay, can I just shoot this one generator?
Right.
So
correct. But he knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing.
He knows it's like a master generator that will blow up the whole facility. That's exactly what happened.
And Cap was like, you knew that was going to happen.
Yep.
So he's still a little bit salty,
Right. Correct.
He still hasn't quite gotten to the humanity part or mercy.
Well, I don't know though. I don't know, because I suspect that was part of his original humanity, right? Okay. I mean, he was a trained soldier. It's not like he had any qualms about killing people that he thought were his enemies.
True.
So I'm not sure how much of that, is part of the Deathlok programming and how much of it is actually part of what was in him initially.
Well, I only say that because later on he does say, "Hey, I respect Cap, and usually I wouldn't listen to anybody, but I'm going to listen to him." So I think he's evolving.
Yeah, well, I think he does respect Cap, but I think he also knows that he's not Cap, and I don't know that he's too uncomfortable with that either.
Right. Yeah. So Deathlok goes and finds the time platform that was in that in that subway tunnel that Godwolf had way back when in Astonishing Tales 36. Yep. And he goes to the future. Now, Cap is thinking to himself, gosh, I was supposed to go to Bernie's parents. But Cap, he's
a love him and leave him type. He's like, the day will always be there. Let me go for this adventure.
Duty comes above all. He's so honorable and so morally centered. He's like, I can't let this guy go, knowing because he I think later on he finds out what happens in 1983. But so when Deathlok is being teleported, he flies in there and gets teleported with Deathlok into the future by Godwolf.
Good night, Gray Man. Thanks for dropping
in. Good night, buddy.
Appreciate it. So yeah, real quickly in the interim, right? Nomad, who is like Cap's training buddy, he saves Scarlet from a mugger. Right, and he's kind of falling for, and I think that was in that last issue, was part of a thin thread storyline that was going through.
Yeah, that's resolved later in the Cap storylines later on. Yep. Yeah.
So what's that? 288.
This is the last one, my friend.
Yep.
Okay, take care, Richard.
Same creative team on this one. Godwolf, because both Cap, but especially Deathlok, they want answers on what's going on with Godwolf, and he promises them answers. He ultimately explains what happened to the world as he takes both of them to the Resistance headquarters that he's part of. So now they know he's a Resistance fighter. They meet his group called the Redeemers. He tells them of Hellinger's. Yep, there they are. He tells, and I think that could have been seed for something else in the future, but it just never really came to fruition. He tells them of Hellinger's plan to destroy the population with Alpha Mechs. He tells Deathlok, hey, I sent you back so you could escape being eliminated by Hellinger, right? Hellinger was hunting you down. He would have gotten you. Ultimately, Cap, Deathlok, and the Resistance, or the Redeemers, they attack Hellinger. There's like a maze in Hellinger's base, right?
Yeah,
and they're having to navigate this maze. The Redeemers are captured, or who knows what happened to them,
right.
But they're eliminated, right? And ultimately, it's just down to Deathlok and Captain America, that are left, right?
Yeah.
And the computer in Deathlok's head is controlled by Hellinger, and it forces Deathlok to shoot Captain America. But ultimately, he fights back. He ends up killing Hellinger, or seemingly killing Hellinger, and he destroys the entire maze and system that Hellinger has set up, which ultimately reveals that it frees the Redeemers who were just like held prisoner there. And I think in the side note, or in the side thread, or whatever you want to call it, something happens with what happened?
Are you talking about what they tell him about the superheroes being killed in 1983?
Oh yeah. No, I wasn't talking about that, but yeah, that is because Cap wants to know how the heck could this have happened, right?
Right.
Where are the superheroes at? And so they talked about that. They were all picked off essentially. After the teams were taken out, it was easy to just pick off the individual superheroes one by one.
Right, and Godwolf and the Redeemers were actually part of the assassination.
They were the assassins, right?
Yeah.
And they had, at some point they all turned and said, "Whoa, we can't be doing this. We need to help now. We understand the system that we're working for, and we don't want to be any part of it."
Exactly. And then at the end, they send Captain America back, but he now knows that this is going to happen. So I didn't bring out 289, but in 289 he takes care of the assassination team so that this future never happens.
Right. And I think Nomad gets brainwashed by Scarlet, right?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. And Deathlok stays there now, but although the main threats are gone, there's society's in shambles. So
correct.
You need a symbol to rally around. So Deathlok is staying behind to help get Godwolf and the Redeemers reform society, essentially.
Right. He's planning to be the symbol to that future society, as Cap has been the symbol to, previously, essentially.
You got it. Excellent. Yeah. And that's it. That is the Luther Manning Deathlok retrospective. Again, there were little parts much later on about Luther Manning that came out, but the main gist of it, the main arc, an opus of Rich Buck.
Richard.
There.
Hey Terry, good to see you. Thanks for stopping in.
So, what are your feelings overall, Bill, about this series? Give us your take on it.
I liked it. Right. I mean, just as far as enjoyment, I enjoyed it. There weren't really any bad issues. Pretty good story. It does get convoluted at some points in time. I think that the whole clone here, clone there could have been handled differently to make it less confusing and to make it a little bit more polarizing and easier to determine who's doing what. But I do think it was a good story. I think it was a good character. It's a shame that he didn't really catch on, because I think that there was a lot of fertile ground to be tilled with the right creative team.
Yeah, I'm with you on most points. At least the Doug Monk parts had a lot of flashbacks and flash forwards.
Correct. And
sometimes they kind of were a little confusing as to what occurred first and what is happening now, right? Not really, super duper convoluted, but I think it could have been done, at least they tried to do I think the shading a little bit different to sort of give you a hint. But again, I think it would have been better if they had a little bit more clear cut as when those flashbacks and flash forwards happened.
Right.
I think especially 26, it went back and forth quite a bit. I like the redemption story aspect of Deathlok. I wish they would have, like the part with Mike Travers and his wife being married afterwards. That I wish that would have been flushed out a little bit more, right. And that Mike Travers relationship would have been a little bit more explored more. It just kind of ended,
Correct.
because that is an interesting dynamic. What now that he is Luther, even though he's a cyborg, and now he's in total control, right? What is Mike going to think? Is he going to at any point have a relationship with his son? All these sort of sidelines that I think they didn't have enough time to explore. So
that's the key. I think these are things that ultimately Buckler probably wanted to explore, and probably could have taken a bunch of different directions. Does his son grow up and hate Luther Manning because of the how events transpired? And does he? Yeah, there's so many ways you could have taken that, right? Does he ultimately regain a friendship with Mike? Does he get his family back? How are those things going to happen? I definitely think that, like I said, there was a lot of fertile ground there. I just don't think that they were able to do it for financial reasons.
I know, but I thought that segment of the concept, right, that he's trying to regain his humanity, and he did, even though he may not have gotten his physical humanity. He found that there was a higher purpose for him. Remember when he was committed suicide, he didn't think there was anything to live for. Correct. Now he has everything to live for, it seems. But again, I think there just wasn't the call, and there wasn't the opportunity to explore that. But I thought that would have been really interesting. They could have taken that in so many directions.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I mean, kind of, sort of, because that's more of a button-up thing. I think that the thing that he has to live for now ultimately is to champion this resistance, right? Yeah. So I'm not sure how much of that was part of the original intention of the character arc. So that's the only thing that I hesitate with on that. How much of that is the new creative team saying, hey, they've asked us to wrap this thing up, so let's do it, versus what was originally intended for the character to go through. So
yeah, I think considering the limitations that you had of only those 3 cap issues,
right,
they did a good job. Like Godwolf explained a lot of questions that we had, right? Yeah. About this is how it degraded. The military complex took over. The CIA had was still active. Right. Other parts of the government were in disarray.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think they did a great job in wrapping it up. It didn't feel rushed too much. It felt like they didn't leave too many things unanswered. So I can't complain about that. I think they did a good job.
Yeah, I agree. But I agree with you. I think the character is really unique. I mean, remember, this is before Terminator and all that stuff, where you have a corrupt military establishment, or at least Riker, somehow overtaking it for his own, sanguine and sinister purposes. And then you have a redemption story, and then you have a symbol of humanity, even though he was supposed to be the instrument of the demise of the enemies of Riker.
Right.
I thought that was a really nice plot development there, and I think just the character himself had so much potential, and there's aspects of him being able to overcome all these obstacles, even though the computer was the one who stopped him committing suicide. Right. He later realized that was a mistake.
Right. And I love the dynamic between him and the computer, because it's almost like there's a begrudging friendship between the two, even though technically the computer can't extend those feelings. It's almost like the computer feels tenderness towards him. And even though he resents the fact that the computer somewhat controls him and tells him what to do and things like that, he does sort of become reliant on having that other personality or that other person around all the time. And so I do like the dynamic between those two. And I think that the character is still relevant. I would say even more so now than perhaps in the 70s, with the advent of AI and all of the advances we've made. I think that the possibility of downloading a consciousness or a set of memories into some cyborg or robotic form and calling that a continuation of life is intriguing, right? And I think that we're getting closer and closer to that point.
Yeah, agreed. It's ahead of its time as far as that concept goes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the one of the most entertaining parts was that dynamic between the pewter and the Manning, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was almost like a Laurel and Hardy thing at some point. But when there was a point where the computer was like damaged and it started spouting all this gibberish, and he was like, "Oh, now when I need your help, you're no good." So it had its really light moments, but overall it was a dark overtones, but in some ways very intriguing that you knew that there was going to be some kind of resolution at some point, because Deathlok just kept escaping over and over and over, and surmounting all these odds. The computer kept saying you're 99.9 survival rate unless you do this or that.
Right.
And he was like, no, I'm doing it my way.
Yeah.
The human spirit or the soul finds a way, is what one of the lessons that, or one of the morals that I took from this is that, technology is great and it's helpful, but it is a tool in the right hands, positive, forward thinking, and helpful. In the wrong hands, destructive, and ultimately could lead to our demise.
Right. Well, I think that's one of the themes that they were pushing, right? I mean, they juxtaposed him succeeding after the computer had told him, you have a less than 1% of a chance of success with this. And I think that was to drive home the point that will can succeed if it's channeled properly. Against all odds, you can succeed. And it's that hope, that glimmer of hope that can help drive you forward.
Agree. James Gallegos is saying something to you there, Bill, about your favorite Star Trek episode.
Oh, yeah. I already did that one.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
My favorite one is when Han Solo is encased in carbonite. That's my favorite episode of Star Trek.
You're gonna make some enemies on here.
So yes, a very, very good series. It was a satisfying read. Not one of my favorites, but it was up there. Like I said, it's hard to find too many weak points with the story. I think it was pretty good, other than a little bit convoluted, confusing at points. I think part of that was just the material that was being dealt with, the nascent computer knowledge that they had in the 70s. Right. That probably contributed to it a little bit, but I enjoyed it, and I know that you did as well.
I agree. I mean, I think we're on the story elements. I think we're right on. I mean, you're right that there was parts that were needlessly convoluted. Well, not needlessly. I think it was, like you said, it's sort of because of the technology and the concepts were just so foreign at that point.
Right.
It seemed it was a little bit of a struggle to get through some of those parts.
Yeah.
But I think the payoff was worth it, ultimately.
Absolutely. And it's kind of unfair. It's a smidge unfair to try to reinterpret things in 2022 instead of being maybe a little bit more benevolent and saying, how would this be interpreted in 76, 77, things like that. So,
but the Deathlok character is still one of my favorites.
There he is.
There he is, right there. Laser pistol. This is actually based on the Michael Collins one, but because there's no Luther Manning figure that I know of, but yeah,
cool.
Character. So we're gonna spin the wheel.
We're gonna spin the wheel.
All right.
While I'm getting that set up, what do you have coming up on your channel, sir?
Well, I just dropped my room my room tour on Thursday. My meta cave of gratitude, and I've gotten a lot of good comments and positive feedback on that. Every Thursday, I'll probably drop some kind of video. I might be doing a complete character history of Machine Man soon.
That'll be exciting.
That's sort of in the same realm, except that this was a totally robotic character that had human characteristics without human input, as far as wet works or anything.
Right.
But I might be doing that this Thursday or perhaps next week. I might be a little busy this week, but it'll come out eventually.
Cool. All right, let's go ahead and do this thing. I think we can you see the wheel?
Yeah.
All right. We've got, so we'll have to add some more to it, but here's what we got. How many spins do you want, sir?
Let's go with 2.
All right. First spin. Nova. All right. Here is the one that counts. Oh boy. Werewolf by Night.
Nice.
That'll be fun.
Nice. 43 issues. There's I think 4 or 5 giant size issues. I do have them all. There's a couple of crossovers. There's a Marvel team up, number 6 or 8 or something like that he's in, and there's a 90 something he's in. I don't know. I don't know how much you want to do the crossovers, or you just want to do the series in the giant size.
I think we'll just do the series and the giants, and I think we can break that up into 2 probably.
Right, because that'd be almost 50 issues.
Right. Yep.
So that's too much to do. We'll be here a long time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll be like, my throat will be parched.
Well, that'll be fun. I'm excited.
All right, so let's see.
I just finished reading. I think volume 1 of The Essential with mini musings, and maybe.
Oh yeah, cool. What did he think?
He enjoyed it.
He did.
Yeah.
Great Plug art we got at the beginning there. I think very interesting storylines when you consider that the main character is often doesn't have a voice
Right.
during the issues.
Right.
So a lot of
similar to Man Thing in that respect.
Yeah, correct. A lot of the supporting characters have a big thrust in the way that the story,
Right.
the way the story elements are presented here.
Yep. Yeah. It definitely enhances their importance.
Yeah.
To the story.
You know what, Bill? I think we have to start with the Marvel spotlights.
Yes, that'll work.
Yeah, so that will be 50 issues. So I'm super excited. I haven't read that in at least 5 or 6 years, so I'll get on. Oh, this is June, July, August.
Yeah, it'll probably be in September. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds good. By that time, the summer's over. A lot of the traveling I'll be doing will be out of the way, and I'll have some time.
Or the beach partying will be done. Yeah.
Not so much beach partying. Beach partying for me is like after a long day of work to soak my bones in a hot or something. That's about it.
I'm right there with you. All right, I'm excited. So next up, sometime in September, we'll do the first of 2 retrospectives on Werewolf by Night, and that first one will be on Roger's channel. Right,
and I'll let you know where the cutoff is. We'll see where a story arc or something ends in the mid-20s. Oh man, I'm excited to read that again. I remember a few issues of it being just like bizarre stuff, and then of course on your channel we'll have the Moon Knight introduction.
Correct.
And which that will be exciting for people. I do have the original. Mine is really beat up, but I don't care. I'll read it.
Good. I don't. But all these, I have them all in trade paperback if they're not on Marvel Essential.
Okay.
I mean, if they're not on Marvel Unlimited. So either way, I'm good.
Okay, great.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. It was wonderful talking about Luther Manning. Thank you, chat, so much for all of your input, for sticking with 2 old rascals. Reminiscing.
One old and one not so old over here.
Reminiscing about a pretty fun Bronze Age series, and hopefully you'll join us on the next one.
I hope so. Yeah, and Jackson Roy Kirk, I hope we made your night just a little more manageable, my friend. We're pulling for you.
Absolutely, he's doing well already. Thanks, Jackson, and everyone else. And always remember, we're taking over the world. That's right. Bye.